They threw their mother in the street and seized her house. What happened next made them regret it. But before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to Happy World, and hit the bell so you'll never miss these great stories. Life has its ups and downs, yet even the most appalling of hardships are appeased by the help and company of family and friends. But what if it's those whom we loved and have always made sacrifices for are the ones who put us in those dire situations? Not only betray our love and trust, but they also hit us when we're down. Today's story about a woman who received shock of her life in the most horrendous way, yet destiny was hiding a surprise that surprised everyone. The hero of our story is a woman named Berta. Growing up in a poor family, Berta started working at the age of 8 to help her mother with raising her 7 siblings after her father mysteriously disappeared without any initial warning. The hard-working little girl ran errands for the neighbors, did laundry for them, and even looked after their children for menial sums of money that helped the family stay afloat. As a teenager, Berta landed a household job as a maid, and it was there where she met Carlos, the gardener, and fell in love with him. Eventually, the couple got married in a small ceremony, and the 16-year-old girl moved in with her husband. The newlywed woman stayed at the humble home where she took care of her mother-in-law. Years passed by, and the young couple were blessed with their first child, Rodolfo. And a couple of years later, Berta gave birth to their second son, Andre. The couple were living happily despite their poverty. They applied for a mortgage to buy a house of their own, yet they were denied. As the kids got older, their expenses increased, and Carlos's salary was not enough to make ends meet. Berta asked Carlos to let her go back to work so that she could help him with the expenses, and he agreed. Carlos spoke to the man for which he worked, and Berta was admitted back as a maid at the house she used to work at. Despite their poverty and the daily struggle to earn enough to support the family, the young couple raised well-behaved and respected children. Berta's sons excelled in their studies, and the proud parents spared them nothing and made endless sacrifices to their kids, succeeding every step of the way. The two boys have always dreamed of pursuing careers in medicine, and Berta and Carlos went far and beyond to save enough money to send their sons to the university. They worked extra hours and took on extra duties and made regular deposits at the savings account dedicated for their sons. Their children were aware of all their efforts their parents were doing and were very appreciative. As they sent both of their kids to the Faculty of Medicine, the couple were finally able to get a loan for a house. The old couple kept struggling to meet monthly payments while their children started getting absorbed into their new environment. Hanging out with people of much higher social class, the two boys started looking down at their humble parents and their modest lifestyle. Both of Berta's sons graduated as specialists in medical fields and chose to move to their own places away from their parents. Empowered by their high salaries, the two men indulged themselves in a life that suited their new status, completely forgetting about their two old parents. As Berta and Carlos got old, life and all the work they did started taking their toll on them, and it wasn't long before Carlos wasn't able to work anymore, leaving Berta as the only family provider. Berta kept hustling to make ends meet, and one day she was offered a new job as a caregiver to a wealthy foreigner called Mr. Charles. Berta took good care of the old man and was in return very kind with her. The salary he gave her was a generous one, and it allowed her to cover all the expenses of her house. Unfortunately, Carlos passed away with no one around him but his faithful, loving wife, as their sons didn't even bother to come and examine their ailing father. Yet the two sons attended their father's funeral that was held at his house. The two men who didn't visit their parents for years were impressed by the property and the improvement Berta and Carlos made to the house. Strangely enough, the eldest son, Rodolfo, came back a couple of weeks to visit Berta without any introductions. The man said to his mother that he and his brother thought that they should inherit the house as soon as possible, as Berta might unexpectedly pass away like Carlos did, and the two sons might face a lot of paperwork that complicates the whole thing. Taken aback by the unusual request, Berta said to her son that she feels healthy and sees no need for that procedure, as according to her, sons are the only heirs and no one will contest them for the ownership of the house. Yet the two men kept visiting their mother, trying to convince her, until she eventually agreed to their request of signing documents that proved that they are the legitimate owners of the property. Once Berta signed the documents, the two men told their mother to look for a place to live in, as they planned to turn the house into a clinic. Stupefied by the outrageous request, Berta was devastated. She looked into the eyes of her two sons and asked them whether they were seriously considering throwing her out of her own house, and they coldly said yes, as according to them, the old woman no longer had a place at their house. Overcome by her tears, Berta asked her sons if she could stay at one of the rooms and even offered to clean the clinic for them. Yet the two cold men heeded none of that, as they simply repeated their initial request, asking Berta to leave the house as soon as possible without any delay. Nothing could explain how Berta felt at that point in her life. She wasn't as much hurt by the fact she was homeless as she was hurt by the fact that it was her sons who cold-heartedly threw her out to the street without a glimpse of sympathy or regret. Not having anywhere to go, Berta turned to her siblings, whom she helped her mother raise, and were all doing well at that time. She first called her sister, who was a lawyer, and asked her for a place to stay, at least until she figured out where she's going to move next. Yet to her surprise, Berta's sister apologized for not being able to help, as she saw Berta's presence as an invasion on her privacy. Surely enough, all Berta's other siblings had the same response, coming up with different excuses for not being able to host the old woman, forgetting all the sacrifices she had made for them. The following day, when the two sons came back home and found that their mother was still there, they took a bag, threw in some of Berta's clothes, and then gave it to Berta and threw her out of the house, warning her never to come back there again, as they wanted nothing to do with her. Berta walked down the road with a heavy heart and a light, half-empty bag of clothes in her hand. She walked aimlessly, crying and recalling all the sacrifices she made to get her sons and siblings to where they were at one point, and how they forgot all that in a second once she wasn't beneficial to them anymore. As the day went by and the night was approaching, Berta went to a homeless shelter, where she met the responsibilities and told them her story. Feeling sorry for the heartbroken old woman, the shelter manager admitted Berta in and assured her that she would always find accommodation and food at the shelter. Berta stayed at the shelter and continued working at Mr. Charles' house to provide for herself. The old man noticed that Berta wasn't being herself, and when he asked her what was wrong with her, the woman broke down in tears and told him her tragic story. The elderly millionaire felt sorry for Berta and even offered her a bedroom in his house. Yet Berta declined the offer, not wanting to disturb him. 3 months passed by, and Berta spent the days at Mr. Charles' house working and returning to the shelter in the evening, where she spent her nights and weekends. One morning, as Berta was heading to Mr. Charles' house to work as usual, she found out that the man had passed away. That was devastating for the woman, as not only she lost a kind person whom she respected and admired, but she also lost her job and only source of income. With her life shattering around her, Berta went back to the shelter and spent the night feeling sad and heartbroken. Yet the following morning, she received an unexpected call from Mr. Charles' lawyer, who summoned her to his office. Upon arriving at the office, the lawyer broke the news that stupefied Berta. It turned out that Mr. Charles named his maid as his only heir to his huge fortunes and real estates. Yet, with the caveat, Mr. Charles made one condition without which Berta wouldn't be able to inherit his wealth. Berta had to avoid sharing anything that she inherited from Mr. Charles with her sons, siblings, and all the people who turned their backs on her when she needed them. Berta could not believe what she was hearing, and happily accepted the condition and started the needed paperwork. The first thing she did after all Mr. Charles' properties were transferred to her, she went to the homeless shelter she stayed at and told the responsibilities she wanted to renovate the place, and that from then on the shelter would never lack food, medicine, or other supplies. The news of the woman who became a millionaire overnight didn't remain a secret for long after local media learned about it. As you might expect, the news reached Berta's sons, who immediately rushed seeking out their mother. When they finally reached her, they threw themselves at her feet, expressing their regret and remorse over what they did, and how they didn't mean any of that. Berta looked both of them in the eyes and told them that they ceased being her family the day they forgot all the sacrifices she made for them and threw her out of her house. She explained to them her only family were the people at the homeless shelter who welcomed her when she needed them most. After that, she asked the two men to immediately leave and never come to see her again, despite their tearful pleas. Not long after her sons left, Berta was surprised by a visit from her siblings, who refused to host her even temporarily. Berta told them that the blood bond that related them ended the day they chose to see their older sister, who sacrificed her youth for them, thrown at the street rather than helping her. Berta spent the rest of her life and her newly found wealth helping as many homeless people as she could, and engaging in charity projects in an endeavor to give back to those who reached their hands out for her when she needed them, without asking anything in return. Love is synonymous with unconditional giving, and when those who sacrifice their lives for us are in need, It's our turn to take them in and make the needed sacrifices to see them happy and well. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and tell us what you think about it in the comment section below.